I'm the oldest of 6 siblings. You know, we 3 boys in one bed, 3 girls in another bed. We had to learn to share. We had to learn not to waste food. One incident that I remember that I'll never forget is that we had a teacher that wanted us to come with leather shoes and dress pants in school. And so I had a paper route that paid $2.10 a week. So I went to the dollar store and bought me some pants, dress pants, and some tennis shoes I bought later. The tennis shoes were from the dollar store. First time they got wet, the sole came loose. The pants were too short and they were pink, and everybody laughed at me when I went into the schoolroom because, you know, I was trying to be cool and I wasn't. And, you know, when you find your own level of people to hang out with, because, you know, you don't get invited to certain parties and stuff like that. But that was not a bad lesson. That was a lesson that prompted me, you know, to do as well as I could. I was born early December the 9th, 1947, in a little town right on the Texas border in Oklahoma called Caddo. The house we were born in didn't have any paint on it. It was up on sticks instead of concrete blocks. When my brother came along, it was so hot there that we'd play under the house, you know, play with little toys. I remember coyotes howling. My mother said, "You better be good or I'm gonna leave you out here where them coyotes can get you." So I've tried to be good since. It ain't worked out too well. But about 4 years old, got pitch dark right in the middle of the day. And my dad was a semi-pro baseball player. He was a big, strong fella. And he was away playing a ball game, so it got dark, and my mother grabbed me and my little brother and took us out into the yard, into a hole we had in the ground. It was a storm cellar. And I don't see how the little woman lifted the door, but she lifted the door and put us inside it and lit a coal oil kerosene lamp. And there was a snake in the top of the door, and she killed it with a hoe. And when my daddy got back, she said, "We're going back to Tennessee," where she was from. So we moved to White Pine on Lone Creek, and he made her living at the start, trapping muskrat and mink. At that time, that early time, you know, $1 then's worth $10 today. He was getting $2 for a muskrat hide and $25 for a mink hide, so we were doing fairly well. And he got a job at American Inca out here, which is at the time one of the best places to work, for $37.50 a week. And with that income, we moved to Morristown in a house, no insulation, no hot water, nothing like that. But, you know, big transition was to move here and have resource of more schools and more things to do, and jobs I could get. When I was about 9 years old, I got a job carrying the Gazette-Mail newspaper. I think you collected about 25 cents a week. You got to keep 7 cents of it. And then I carried the Knoxville Journal also in the mornings. And I can't ever remember being broke. You could pick up Coca-Cola bottles and turn them in for 2 cents, or you could work at a farmer in the tobacco fields for $3, or hay fields for $3 a day. Can't ever remember being broke. I've still got $50 in my billfold. Funny thing, I mean, you know, the black-white issue. I grew up around both races. You know, my dad had a good friend, Pete Cloud, another fellow. They'd go hunting in Colorado. This is back before integration days. I started school at Hillcrest School, went on to Morristown Junior High, and then it was Morristown High School, and never went to public schools with someone out of my race. You know, but I mean, Mr. Cloud's wife and my mother'd sit around. She'd come by and visit, and they'd sit around talking. Dad'd go hunting and stuff. I remember Morristown College, the first memories I had. early memories going downtown to pick up my newspapers. They had a Silver Moon Cafe. It was a black cafe right behind downtown, and black folks would be standing up there, and you didn't know them, but then they had the railroad station where people would get off. Then when I started at East Tennessee State, but the Vietnam War was going on, so I got drafted into the Army. When I got drafted into the Army, I signed up for another year because my father had been in World War II, and you just thought sort of like it was it's something you needed to do. And they give you tests, and normally you might get infantry, or that's where you carry your gun and fight, or artillery where you shoot a cannon, or armor if you were a 2-year draftee. And so they give you a test, and I thought one time I'd better get on the ball, so I tried hard on the test, and that qualified me to go to a school, quartermaster school, where you hand out equipment to soldiers. And I did well in that school, so they said, you've qualified for another school. So they sent me to a school called Missile Repair Parts, where you order parts for guided missiles. Now we're talking about some of them were nuclear guided missiles. And that gave me a bunch of security clearances. Then they sent me to Germany, down to the south, and they asked me what I did, and I told them fix missiles, and they said they're all up there on the Russians were threatening Europe at the Fulda Gap up there, and they had the missiles in that area, so they said we don't have any missiles down here. So they promoted me and made me a top secret control, alternate top secret control officer. Yeah, well, I was on a missile site in Philadelphia, and those folks up there don't want no missiles around them, so we had just about 100 of us, and we had to, when we went off post, we had to put regular clothes on. They'd have freaked out on both sides of Philly. But when I got out of the Army, the GI Bill, back in my day, young folks on our economical level, we were allowed to either go, we could have went to East Tennessee State University, that's pretty close, but we had to pay for the admissions, and we had to pay for a place to live and to eat. Or we could have went to Carson Newman, which was a private school, it's more expensive, or to the University of Tennessee. So there was no money, on my level to go to college. I tried a little while at East Tennessee State before I got drafted, but when I came back, they had just opened Walters State. And I thought, I'm 3 years older, and this is an opportunity, and may as well try it. And I had a teacher here at Walters State, 1 or 2 or 3, that really connected with me. I still have my old Granger County dialect, and I tried to talk more properly, but it never worked out, and I said, why worry with it? So that sent me to UT. That got me a job teaching school, and my starting pay at teaching, and this, Alpha, was about the same as when I made it to factory 7 years earlier. So, and I was wanting to buy a house, and we had a child, and so I had to get a second job. I've kept 2 and 3 jobs for 50 years now because I just hate to waste a day of life. So I went into the National Guard, and they didn't have no top secret people, so they put me in the infantry where I'd run around with a squad of guys that just returned from Vietnam. And then they made me a tank commander, and then they made me construction, battlefield construction platoon sergeant. And finally, I was orderly sergeant for, I was trying to think of the title. Myself and a major would go around to all the units, because our unit was called out for 4 different wars: Vietnam, Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. So our boys were pretty well used up, and we had to maintain all the bases here in East Tennessee. You know, they left a few people behind just to do that. And he later became a general, and I was his operations NCO. And I just got one of my favorite letters ever. He said, I'm the best friend he has living, because we worked together so well. He had a way of leadership, and he said, this is what we have to do. And I'm going to do this part, see what you can do with the others. So anyway, got in the National Guard to get the extra money. Worked at some stores around here on my time off from teaching. Started Dollywood 28 years ago in the summers and the winter. Did graduate work, graduate work at the University of Tennessee, and then it was called handicapped education. Today the word's been changed to disabled. University of Tennessee, then I went to study the Constitution at Rutgers up in New Jersey. Then I went to study Russian history at Harvard up in Massachusetts, studied at Tennessee Tech and Carson Newman. And of all of that, now seriously, I'm not patronizing anybody, this school's the one that turned me. So I taught school from the second grade for a while, middle school, West High School, a private school, All Saints Episcopal School, and I don't think I know a person I'd trade places with. Never made a lot of money, but life's been full. I always had been blessed with health until a couple of years ago. It got severe COVID. I died, and they brought me back. 15 days ICU. It affected my heart valve. I had to have an artificial valve put in, and the lack of oxygen in my mind made me forget things, and it had to rewire itself to where I could go back. I also, I write a newspaper column for 38 years. A professor at Harvard gave me a piece of advice that impacted me. We were turning in our findings, and he was looking at mine, and he said, when most people go to solve a problem, they normally go beyond the solution and just create new problems. He said, it's a gift to be able to take a complicated issue and solve it with a simple, workable solution. And another, Morgan Freeman, he summed it up just about as well. He made a statement on racism that just impacted me. He said, the best way to get rid of racism is don't talk about it. That's Morgan Freeman. And, I've got a farm, we've got horses and dogs, love dogs, had every kind of dog going. And, all of them been the same. They've loved me if I treat them right. A typical day, I like to stay busy. When I was laying in ICU, I couldn't move but 4 feet, and I'd work out little word puzzles in my mind. I figured we hire 80-year-old people all the time. They're the best employees. They got attitude, work ethic. If you live to be 80 years old, I worked this out in my head, because I couldn't move, or a pencil or nothing. And if you make it 80 years, and I'll be 77, that means that you were born in 1944. And 80-year-old people are everywhere now, active. You see some people in their 50s and 60s that have retired and just waiting on the funeral home truck. But an 80-year-old person was born in 1944. They were living during World War II, the worst war in the history of the world. They saw the first televisions, the first early jet planes, computers. They've seen a lot. If you live 80 years, it's still only 29,220 days. And if you translate that into money, that's $29,220, and you can barely buy a decent car now, a new car for that. So every day is a gift, and every day is something to be used. Somebody that died in 1944, when that person was born, that lived during this time, was born in 1864. They saw the United States come apart in the Civil War. They saw the first telephones. 1876, the United States was 100 years old. They saw the first automobiles go as fast as a riding lawnmower. Saw the first airplanes. They saw the World War I, which was just a butchery on a high level. They were fighting in 1800 style against 20th century weapons. Some units would lose over 100%. They just throw draftees in there. But it was almost forgotten because 20 years later, here comes World War II. They saw the Roaring Twenties when girls cut their hair short and cut their skirts short. Then they saw the Depression where two of my uncles worked all day for a man for a piece of yellow pig meat. And then they saw the beginning of World War II. That's just 2 lifetimes back. I've talked to the wife of a Civil War soldier. I've talked to children of Civil War soldiers. I've talked to children of former slaves. They told me this stories. I like to do history not from the top down, who was the president, who was the general. I like to do it from the bottom up, the people that actually did it. So they told, so those people that were born in 1864, and you and I both know people that lived in the 1800s, some 1897 or whatever. And the kids today are going to live into the next century if they're 80 years old, 2110 or whatever. Well, anyway, the people that were born in 1864 and got to live to be 80 years old saw all of that, airplanes, cars, everything. Then when a person was born in 1864, another 80-year-old died. They were born when the United States had defeated the strongest country in the world in the American Revolution. They were born a year after the Treaty of Paris was signed. And they saw the first boats go up a stream without somebody paddling them, steamboats. They saw the first photographs. They saw the first instant communication with telegraph. And then they saw the Civil War start. They saw the United States break in two. That's 3 lifetimes, just 3 tiny lifetimes. You see 80-year-old people walking in hordes or at the stores. Somebody that died in 1784 was born in 1704, before there was a United States. They saw the hunters come in here. They saw the French and Indian War. They saw the Declaration of Independence being signed. We divorced from England. They saw all that. And just 4 lifetimes is the whole history of this country. And again, I'll just repeat what I said earlier. Everybody's left it in many ways better than the last group of people for us. And to me, it seems to be a duty to pass that along, to pass that benefit along. Life's made up with a bunch of choices. You get something the easy way, but it means more to you if you earned it with your hands, when you went a little bit further than what a lot of folks expected of you. My favorite color is burgundy, I guess because I used to have red hair, and I thought the little old girls thought I was hot in red burgundy shirts. My favorite sports team, at first, I was born in Oklahoma, and I grew up watching this fella named Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was awesome. He was an Oklahoma boy. Then here come Hammer and Hank Aaron. He done stuff that ain't nobody done, After that, they started paying these athletes so much money, more than anybody could ever make. I just kind of got away from sports. UT makes me proud to see them win. Bill Gardner, who coached here at Walter State, is a friend of mine, and he did this little old college. Started out in an incredible athletic zone. nobody ever heard of Morristown, and then Walter State comes up and we start sending people to the pros. So I try to just kind of run the range. If somebody's out there doing a really good job, I'm for them. It's like that little old girl in the college basketball player. You go look back over all the great athletes we've had. She just joined the crew this year, I mean, and to think about it, I mean, I was a skinny nerd growing up, and you see these folks that are blessed with these abilities, and you just kind of envy them. Yeah. So I'm not going to stick with one. I just want to study them all. When I think about Morristown, Tennessee, now I mean I've lived several countries, a lot of cities, from Massachusetts to California, and we've got a distinct culture here. And you go a lot of places, and when I'm at home, people drive by my house. They don't know me from Adam's house cat. They're going to wave at me. You know what I mean? And if I don't wave back at them, they're going to say, he ain't from here. But the one distinct thing is that people are pretty well accepted. I remember when they integrated the schools about a year or two after I got out of high school. And I got to be friends with some of those early black students, Willie Miller, Humphrey Howell, and all of them. And everybody thought, they're going to be a war or something. Willie Miller wound up president of the class. Humphrey Howell was one of the most popular people in school. So the young people had a better idea than the old people. I remember as a teacher, had black and white kids in my classes, and then the first Hispanics come in, could barely speak English. And those two groups would get around the Hispanics because they were new and, kind of almost seemingly intimidate them, not on a physical level, where are you from? I had one of them tell me, I said, he said, I cannot speak English very much, Mr. Claiborne. His name is Martine. I said, Martine, you just hang out here and try to do what you can do, and I'm going to make sure you get past. Because that man was honest to me. And he said, no, Mr. Claiborne, my father told me to study hard so I don't have to be in the fields like him. So it's just a process of people learning people. It's like a process of having a spotted horse and a black horse, or a process of how you're going to love them if you understand them. I want to get on the highway and drive all over this country on non-interstates. About the most beautiful places I've ever visited was in Europe. One place, Vienna, is supposed to be one of the most beautiful cities. I'd like to go over there. Morocco, I had a friend in Paris, France, and she'd always like to go to North Africa. She said that's the best place for her to vacation. So I'd like to do that. Oh, that's a good question, and I tell you right now, who was that? You tell me this. I'm having one of my little episodes. Will Rogers. Will Rogers was brilliant, but he had a way of telling a story that impacted you in simple language. My favorite thing is got anything you need. This is a secret town because all these other towns, get all the noise. And this town's got everything. I mean, anything. I'm 77 years, nearly 77 years old, and there's something to do every day. Like right here, like we're doing, I ain't gonna wait on no funeral home truck. There's something to do. There's opportunity. I mean, we've got high-tech industries that are begging for workers at really decent wages. Educational opportunities. We got private and public schools, good quality schools. My big issue is this, and probably, I work at Dollywood, and she's got the Imagination Library, and I'd say the key to everything. I can remember growing up, by the time I was like 13, there were two times in my life I had a dollar bill. And I'd go down to the pawn shop downtown, and you could buy comic books for 5 cents a piece. They were used ones, and you read them, take them back, and they give you 5 cents for 2 and sell you 1 for 5. That was their profit. And I started reading, and you know, if I think that's the key to anybody's station in life, reading. It's that simple. Right now, this is not especially so, but I've seen times when certain figures would direct the course of this town just because of their, you know, their social standard, their social position.
Morristown Task Force on Diversity. Theme is about unity in the community.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts on how we can better unify people in the Morristown community and where you envision Morristown in the future.
I mentioned those 80-year lifetimes. We always have a crisis about every 80 years, you know, wars and stuff. This is a crisis right now. We're sort of in disunity because of something silly like politics, you know. Too many times any politician goes into it to get power, and you know, they're ambitious, and I just wish we could get away from disunity, because I mean, you and I have been friends for 30 years. I don't think we ever had any issues, and we can have a conversation that's deep. You listen to my end, I listen to your end. I pick out the good stuff you say, you pick out the good stuff I say, and make it work. That's now the second thing. Where do I see Morristown in years to come? If we can get over this disunity, I saw this personally when I recently had a heart valve put in. A year prior to that, they sawed a fella open at his sternum and put it in. When I went down, they just ran a wire up and watched it on TV and stuck a heart valve in, pulled the wire out, and had me walking in 2 hours. And if we can continue, you know, our growth in science, technology, and do it unified, I see a beautiful, beautiful period that I'd like to live in. Otherwise, if we don't unify and get along with each other, there's I see 3 million people a year at Dollywood, and I've never seen any two alike. I've never seen any two people with the same exact standards, you know. But I've seen a lot. The best lesson I had in unity is this. In the military for a while, I was a tank commander. I was the guy that sit up on top with a shoot me first sign on my back. Inside was a young fella, maybe been in the tank a month. The young fella, he was the driver. His responsibility was to make sure the tank ran well, had all the grease fittings and all that stuff. Everything was up. And when I gave an order, like say gun or battle sight tank, he had to respond the instant I gave that order. The next guy in my tank was a stocky guy, and I'm not going to point to nobody, but he loaded the gun with 65-pound shells. And if he didn't listen to that real quick 1-second order, he might put a different type of shell in there. Like instead of armor piercing, he'd put in high explosive. The third guy inside that tank was the gunner. He could have hit a pie plate at a 1/4 mile away. And if I got shot up on top, my responsibility was this: to teach that second guy everything I knew about running a tank, about commanding it. He had to drop the responsibility to the loader to teach him to be a gunner. The loader had to drop that responsibility to the driver to be the new loader. That's what we have to do in life. If you're doing a job, It's your job to take these people, these younger people under you, and educate them to where they can do your job and maybe even do your job better than you did it.